Hi guys, this is Jordan Wilson with this first video, and in this video I want to talk about the American dream and is the American dream dead? Well, I'm gonna go out and answer the question. No, not entirely, but let me explain. I think that the American dream is hard to access nowadays, more now than ever, but specifically if you're talking about the social aspect of the American dream, in a lot of regards, it is dead. For example, my city, I can walk around my city for a couple of hours, a 4 to 5 hour period with the specific incentive, with a specific purpose of meeting a girl. And then I'll go out for 4 or 5 hours and I won't hardly meet anyone because there's very low volume because of how the cities are organized in a lot of ways. And that's a huge part of it. The infrastructure of American cities is very subpar, and it's coming from someone that has experience living in other countries. I've lived in UAE, Egypt, I've lived in Korea, I've lived in Japan, and coming from someone that's lived and traveled to many different countries, I would say that the American dream socially definitely is dead, because it's so hard for Americans to be able to access good infrastructure because we don't really have good infrastructure in this country. For most part, in order to have a social life, you need to have a car. And for the longest time, coming from my perspective, I didn't have a car. So socially speaking, I was somewhat kind of screwed. Not entirely screwed, but having a car is a huge factor in your social mobility in this country. Versus in other countries, that's not really the case. I mean, if you're going in the United Kingdom, you're gonna have good transportation. And yeah, all countries worldwide are kind of dealing with some sort of, like I say, a social kind of decline, population decline. People are having less babies. But United States, I would argue to say that our underlining culture really has kind of like made it worse. And American culture is toxic. All countries are dealing with a population decline issue. All the countries, like 2 countries that I've listed, Japan and Korea, are dealing with a population issue. However, the infrastructure in those countries is awesome, and they make life convenient for your average citizen. Versus here, your life for your average American probably actually kind of sucks compared to your life for your average Korean or your average Japanese, because they're able to have other satisfactions in like other type of ways, and they don't have to spend absorbent fees on a car. And a car is not a status symbol really there, or really in any country outside of America. To be fair, it is still a status symbol in a lot of parts of the world, but it's not as much of a status symbol as it is in the United States. And that's another thing that I've kind of noticed in America is there's a lot more importance on status symbols instead of like actual social mobility and being able to talk to people. There's a lot more of an emphasis on who you know and not necessarily who you are as a person. I'm just speaking, also keep in mind, I'm speaking from my city's perspective in Atlanta. From what I've seen, it can be kind of somewhat cliquey, and then it is cliquey, but then not even just that. I could deal with clickiness if it made some sense, if this was actually a big premier city, but it's just not, and people are kind of just cliquey for no reason. You go into a club, you go into a bar, and no one is dancing for the most part. No one is doing anything. And the fun is just not there. And like, again, when I'm overseas, people are having a good time. People seem to have an idea of fun. But versus here, a lot of ways, Americans just don't like to have fun and are just status driven more so. Like, even when I was in Korea, I remember I had a freaking great time in Korea. I lived in Korea for a month for my study abroad program, but it was fun. It was hyped. I went out every single night. And yeah, there's always something to do. And people here in Atlanta will tell you that there's always something to do here, but there's frankly really not. You can go to our Peanut Park, you can go to the Beltline, you can go to the Battery in Cobb County, you can go to any part of Atlanta, and for most part, it's pretty dead. I would say for most parts of the city are dead. And there's not as many people just walking around. That's just not an American thing. For example, if you were to go out in a 4 to 5 hour period, and I'm just going to speak from picking up girl type of perspective, if you were to go out for a 4 to 5 hour period in this city, in any part of the city, I'll be honest, like even somewhat hyped, even Edgewood, in a 4 to 5 hour period, you'd probably be able to approach 1 to 2 girls. And that's a pretty low RI. If I was a stock investor, I would tell you to uninvest in that stock, because that's not a good idea. And, you know, like, that's to my point that America, for me, and just the city I live in mainly, yeah, too, but I have experienced living in other parts of America. So overall, I just feel as though I'm not really that happy here. And my eventual goal is to live overseas. And yeah, I'll talk about that probably more in like another video, but I just wanted just to tell you guys in this video, just mainly about the social, just a little bit about the social aspect, a little bit about my background, but I'll probably expand upon this in another video in a couple of days. All right, see you guys in the next vid.